We have final test results on the 2020 Hyundai Sonata midsize sedan, helpful hygiene tips when pumping gas, and look at what the economic uncertainty may mean for buying a car. Next on Talking Cars. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode. I'm John Lincove.
I'm Mike Monticello.
And I'm Jake Fisher.
And you can see that it's the second remote COVID-inspired podcast. We're all working from home still, and we really appreciate the feedback that we got from everyone from last week. We appreciate you understanding what we've been working with. Everyone's working with a whole new type of, quote, new normal, and so us here. So we're keeping Talking Cars going, and we really appreciate the feedback. Thanks very much. The questions, keep sending them on, talkingcars@icloud.com, and let us know what you think about the podcast format. We're going to jump in with news, and it is COVID virus related because we've done some work about people who have to still drive their cars, even though people are quarantined and there's a lot of non-essential jobs that are closed for work at home. There are people who still have to drive. There are people who still have to fill up their car with fuel. And there's been questions about what happens with the virus on gas pumps and the keypads and such. And Mike, we did a story about that recently on consumerreports.org about what people should do, some steps and best practices that they could take to keep themselves clean and protected from transmitting the virus, right?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, we have a really in-depth story up on the site about that because it's important because experts are saying that the virus can stay on hard surfaces for anywhere from several hours to a couple of days. So you really want to protect yourself when you're out there. And think about it, when you get, you're in your car your whole time by yourself, maybe you can go quite a long ways by yourself without doing anything with the public. But when you have to stop and get gas, now you're touching a fuel pump and buttons on the credit card keypad that maybe hundreds of people have touched that day. So really, it's really important to protect yourself. And one of the best ways you can do that is to use disposable latex gloves. You can also use a paper towel. A lot of gas stations have paper towels there. You can just grab a paper towel. So when you grab the pump or the pump lever, because remember also, when you're squeezing the pump, that's something that people's fingers are touching as well. So if you can use latex gloves, that's the best. And then you're going to want to throw those out right afterwards. But keep in mind, you're also going to touch the credit card keypad. So you really want to do that. Another thing you can do is you can use disinfectant wipes if you don't have latex gloves. If you have disinfectant wipes, you can wipe everything down. The fuel pump, lever, everything, the buttons, the button for the grade of the gasoline, all those things. You can disinfect all those before you even do anything. And then of course, when you are done with this and you get back in your car, you either want to wash your hands or use some sanitizer, before you touch anything inside your car. Something I've been doing now in my own car, well, actually in my test car, is I have a travel size sanitizer, in the bottle holder area. And as soon as I get in the car, if I've been out in public anywhere, the first thing I do before I touch anything in the car is to get some sanitizer all over my hands.
So that's a really good point, Monty, because we do have the test cars, but some of us also have personal cars we're driving. And Jake, I wondered what's going on with your family, what type of practices you guys have been following as well, because we know you have a Prius. We've talked about that previously on the Talking Cars. So what's been your experience going out in the public and fueling up?
Well, I mean, this is exactly it. I mean, this is, it's something that's quite normal, and you could be taking all the precautions and you could be 12 feet away from people, and then all of a sudden you go pump gas and you're not even thinking about it. So I think, I'm happy we put out that article. And actually my parents just came back from Florida. So they drove 3 days from Florida to New Jersey. And I, called them and I'm like, hey, you know what? They were on top of, in the hotels, wiping down all the surfaces and everything that he touched. Even the credit card in the hotel, the people behind the counter were wiping it for them, and they're older, so they're definitely very concerned. But absolutely, in the gas stations, they took all these precautions. They had gloves on, and they were really careful. We're trying to be. Well, I mean, we're super careful too. I mean, I've been actually out driving with my son. My son's got a permit, so we're using this opportunity to drive around a bit. obviously, fortunately we have a very reliable car, but I mean, all these types of things, I mean, we're thinking, we got jumper cables in the car. We're just ready. We don't want to be, in a jumper pack, because we don't want to be, somewhere where you're not familiar or having to touch things when you're outside. It's just super concerning.
Can I make one other tip, John?
Sure, definitely go in.
I mean, we sort of touched on this last week as well when we were talking about the coronavirus and disinfecting the inside of your car. No matter what you do, whether you are able to take these precautions or not, as soon as you get home, before you touch anything, wash your hands. That's the first thing you want to do when you get home, is wash your hands if you've been out in public in your car or whatever, because it's just the best way to make sure that you don't have that virus on you.
So I mean, we're often very. I mean, my wife is very concerned about germs even before this. So I mean, we in our family, I mean, the hands get washed, the clothes come off, they get washed. I'm showering. I mean, I don't think there is a scenario here where you could be, just take too many precautions. So
does she hose you down as soon as you guys get home, Jake? Is there like a hose down room?
Please don't give her any ideas, but it's almost that. I mean, it's strip down, wash everything at high temperatures, and shower. And you know what? I really can't complain. I mean, it's just it doesn't hurt. That's all I gotta say.
You know what's funny is that I mentioned how I now have this little travel size container of hand sanitizer in my car. It's probably something I should have had in there this whole time.
Well, I think that's a great point, and so it was interesting. When we got gas, I was driving around with my son, and my son's car is now my wife's old car, and she's got gloves in there. She's always used gloves whenever she was using the gas pumps, because if it wasn't coronavirus, you could get the flu. There's other things you could get. So, I think on the other end of this, when this gets better, I mean, certainly all these precautions certainly don't hurt, as long as they don't get in the way too much with your everyday life.
I've seen some people, and I've even done this in the past, like you talked about with gloves, keep a box in a car that, now again, it's the car we own, so you keep a box in there, and it's like a pair of work gloves. So you can keep a pair of gloves in there, and then every once in a while wash those, as long as it's, you're taking the glove off, you're putting it in the box, then you're cleaning your hands afterwards. But you could have a pair of work gloves. It does end up in potentially transferring something back and forth, but if you're not going to use latex gloves because you want to save them for first responders, or you just don't want to be throwing something away, you could also use paper towel, like Monty said. I found it really interesting, Jake, that you're finally showering. That the coronavirus, it seems to have introduced that. And on that note, you could go to consumerreports.org and see all of our COVID coverage for cars, as well as just keeping yourself healthy. We're going to move on to the car that was in our fleet this week. We're going to talk about the Hyundai Sonata. We bought a 2020 Hyundai Sonata SEL, 4-door sedan, as if you don't know. It has a 191 horsepower, 2.5 liter 4-cylinder engine, 8-speed automatic transmission, front-wheel drive. The MSRP, manufacturer suggested retail price, is $25,500 for that version. To that, we added $240 of options. With destination, came out to $26,670. Okay, Jake, so the Hyundai Sonata has gone through our full testing. It takes on some heavyweights in the category, like the Honda Accord, the Subaru Legacy, the Toyota Camry. Can you tell us really how it's matching up?
Well, first of all, let's. You mentioned heavyweights. I mean, sedans aren't dead. I think for a lot of people, they're really thinking about small SUVs. They're thinking about mid-sized SUVs. Sedans are still a really big part of the United States automotive market. And they're still taking these very seriously, and there's some really good vehicles in this category. So, you look at the Sonata, which, was a good choice before. And what they have done is they're trying to make this more appealing. They're trying to make it more stylish. They're trying to make it more sexy and interesting. And, we've talked about it before, and, you look at the headlights and the LED pieces around the hood, and it looks really kind of neat. I think what was a little disappointing is that some of that styling is translated into not quite as good as a vehicle as it was before. And, So for instance, I mean, that some of that swoopy styling, the rear seat is not quite as great. I mean, you could find better rear seats and, Camrys and Accords and some of the competition. The other thing is it's a bit lower. So the Sonata was always kind of like this kind of upright vehicle, which kind of has some nice things about it. It makes it easy to get in and out of, again, that room in there. So it's a little bit more low slung. The other thing is the ride. It's not quite as nice as it was before. It's a bit stiff, and it doesn't necessarily translate into a really sporty, fun driving experience. The emergency handling actually in our test was very good. I mean, that stiff ride, that firm ride can help there. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm kind of, nitpicking a little bit if talking about some of these issues. I mean, still, it is a fine vehicle. I mean, if you are interested and you like the styling, you're not going to go wrong. But if you're really, comparing all those significant digits, there are some better options out there.
Mike, Jake kind of alluded to it in the sense of you have the heavyweights in the segment and you still have a big segment, but at the same time, domestic manufacturers are dropping sedans. You see even big sedans, the large category, the next one up is really falling down. They're almost hemorrhaging models. Is Hyundai really chasing a small and smaller slice of the pie? Is it something that they need to keep going with, or should they focus more on even more SUVs?
Well, I mean, I'd like them to keep focusing on sedans or keep having sedans part of the mix. I mean, in theory, you might think, okay, well, if some automakers are getting rid of some sedan models, then that leaves room for other companies who still have some. There's less pieces of the pie out there, so now people will have to go to your car if they want a sedan. This is a car, that a Sonata at one point sold over 200,000 cars a year in the US. And, last year they sold 87,000. So it has been declining. We all know that. But even if they only sell 60 to 80 to 100,000 cars a year, that's still a lot of cars. And, they also have, their Santa Fe and Tucson to fall back on that sell quite well. The Elantra compact sedan sells, around 200,000 a year. So there's still a lot. People are still buying sedans. And Jake talked about it. One of the cool things about this, and I think that will drive people to think about buying it, is that it looks really good. I mean, it's one of those, coupe looking sedans. It's got this sloping roof line. Yes, it hurts the rear seat room, and that's not the best. But it has presence. I mean, sitting in your driveway, it's going to look good. And for me, when I buy something, I'm not concerned about how other people look at the car. But if I like looking at it, that's important to me. So I think it's great that they're sticking with the sedan. I think it's great that they put so much effort into it. Unfortunately, it does fall down in a few areas, like Jake talked about. For me, one of the things that bothers me about the car is just it has this initial abruptness leaving the line, which is something manufacturers usually tune in because they want to make the car feel quicker than it is, which is a shame. It's something I think you could get used to as an owner, but I still think it makes the car feel less refined when they do that. And also, the car has pretty good power, and it's got a really good 8-speed automatic transmission that shifts quickly, shifts smoothly. So, I mean, it's a good drivetrain, once you're past that initial abruptness.
Well, we've talked about the ride and the handling and such, but what about the rest of the car living in it, Jake? There's interior fit and finish, there's technology, but there's also just the safety aspect for this family sedan.
So inside the car, I mean, I think one way to think about it is with every new redesigned vehicle, you're going to see a few things. You're going to see the latest in terms of technology, which is good and it's bad. A lot of nice features, but also a lot of so it's like, for instance, the normal stereo is not that bad. Hyundai does a pretty good job in terms of infotainment. What the up-level one does is it actually takes away your volume knob, which isn't that great. In terms of the shifter, again, we're seeing a lot of new vehicles with different features. This one actually has these flat buttons, which is really not an improvement because now you got to look down every time. If you're doing, some kind of a K-turn or something, you got to look down every time. You got to look at your buttons. And then in terms of the other change that we see with new vehicles is the safety equipment. So this has a lot of standard safety equipment, which is very, very nice. I think one thing really interesting, we talked about, how our sedans going away. What we are seeing is kind of a survival of the fittest. And certainly when you look at the Sonata, it is one of the fitter ones. If you look at minivans, for instance, right, the minivan market got smaller, but the ones that are still around tend to be really good ones. So I think that's what we're seeing with sedans. There are a bunch of really good ones. And, we're talking about these things about we don't like this so much and we don't like that so much. But as a whole, when you look at these sedans, I mean, they're much better options in a lot of these areas than an SUV counterpart. So SUVs, because there's such a demand for it and people are just so excited to get SUVs, they're not quite as competitive as these. So when you look at the fine print here, I mean, you look at fuel economy and you look at comfort and stuff like that, all of these vehicles are actually really quite good.
Well, and you were sort of talking about, Jake, we're sort of, I mean, it's our job as auto journalists to nitpick a little bit, right? So that's what we're supposed to do. But I think ultimately one of the biggest things comes down to, do you enjoy driving the car? And I actually do enjoy driving the car. Yes, there's there's that initial abruptness that I'm not a fan of, and the ride's a little stiffer than it should be. That's a bit of a shame. But it is fun to take through corners, and not all midsize sedans are actually fun to take on a curvy road, and this one actually is.
I like how you put that. It's like, do you like driving the vehicle? Also, like you talked about, do you like the way the car looks? When it comes to sedans, you can discriminate. You can say, okay, I want the one that looks nice. Now, if you're looking at SUVs, and if you're going to go buy a Land Rover Evoque because you like the way it looks, you're probably going to make a bad choice because it's not that great of a vehicle. When it comes to sedans, yeah, you can discriminate that way.
Well, some of it, what we were talking about with the kind of segments falling apart, just like you talked about the Land Rover, for example, look at some of the big sedans. You see fewer and fewer large sedans. Unfortunately, one like the Chevrolet Impala going away, a great sedan, very roomy. You have a Ford Taurus out there with a tiny trunk, a giant vehicle, a small interior. That's going to be survival of the fittest where those go away, and Ford will focus on SUVs and smaller cars. But one of the things I find interesting is that the compact car segment is kind of a strong, booming segment out there in sales. They're still affordable. They're roomy because they keep growing every generation. The cars get a little bigger. And midsize sedans are taking in some of that space from large sedans. And the compact cars are taking up some of that midsize sedan room. So maybe we end up having fewer segments overall, but we have better ones at the end. Well, we've got all of the Sonata information on consumerreports.org. We have our first drive if you want to see what we first thought of it. And then you could take a look at our test results as well to see how it shook out in the mid-sized sedan category. So with that, we're going to move over to our questions section. Please send them on to us, talkingcars@icloud.com. Text questions, video questions. We're going to be here in our houses waiting for them with bated breath so we could keep giving you Talking Cars each week. So again, send them on to us. We're definitely looking forward to them. Our first one comes from Alan, who asks, regarding your advice on desanitizing your car of coronavirus, are you sure using a microfiber will be effective? Are they antimicrobial and or antivirus? Everything I've seen references using them in combination with alcohol or soap and water. You can't just use a cloth alone, right? Well, Alan, that is right, and probably glossed over it in the talk last week. You definitely want to make a soap and water mixture and put it on the cloth, submerge the cloth in there, or even put some alcohol on the cloth itself to wipe the screens. It's basically that the microfiber cloth won't scratch the different displays. A paper towel, even a kind of a junky rag or something like that, or a hand towel, that could end up having something on there that scratches it. So, use a clean cloth, but put on soap and water, put on alcohol, and then gently wipe the surface to get the virus off, fingerprints, but you won't mar the surface. Definitely let us know how it goes. The second question is Donald from Mississippi, who says, I just became a member of Consumer Reports because I love the podcast. Thank you. I know there are always various incentives offered on new vehicles. When an economic shakeup, like the coronavirus pandemic, occurs, do incentives typically get better? P.S. I've been binging past Talking Cars episodes the last few days and learned something new every time. Oh, thanks, Donald. Mike, we've been involved in buying cars for years. This is part of what we do. Have you seen anything? Have you heard anything new going on with incentives, what we look for, but also what's going on with the coronavirus?
Yeah, so I'd say, that this could be a good time where you might want to consider what's your job situation going to be, a few months from now, because things could be a little up in the air. But as far as what are automakers want your business, dealers want your business. We're seeing loans out there with 0% financing for up to 7 years. And dealers are making some pretty big changes to kind of help you make this purchase so that you don't have to have any contact with them. I mean, it's going to vary from dealer to dealer and state to state. But I talked to some dealers in Connecticut as well as in New York State, and they're basically telling me that they're capable of doing the whole process online or over the phone. Some dealers are saying you can, the only thing you'd have to do is just come and you'll pick up the new car curbside. And other dealers are saying we'll actually deliver the car to you at your home. Now, the one thing that they did tell me is that some dealers are only going to be dealing with, or maybe a lot of dealers are going to be dealing with only what's in stock right now, meaning they may not be trying to get a car from another dealer, won't be doing any ordering, but if they have it in stock, they're going to try and get you a good deal on that car and it's interesting, kind of really changing the whole buying process, something that I think we've all been saying, why have they made it so difficult on buyers for all these years, where you have to go in and spend 2 hours with the F&I guy when you're actually there to pick up the car, and suddenly it's like, oh no, we'll take care of everything online and then we'll even deliver the car to your house.
Jake, do you think that that's going to have an impact on dealers' bottom lines, and that they're going to have to come up with profit in a new way, because the finance and insurance segment of the purchase is always the place for upselling?
Well, what's interesting about kind of this weird time that we're in is that we're learning a lot of things really quick. And I think people are trying to figure out how to do things differently. I mean, we're obviously doing something very differently. I mean, even this week, my wife allowed me to get out of the basement this week, which was nice. But it's true. I mean, if you could go and buy a car and you don't have to go to a dealership and you could get it delivered to you, why not continue on with that? Why don't we figure out ways of doing different things that consumers want? In terms of, is there a deal to be had right now? I mean, Mike's right. I mean, there's pros and there's cons, and it's really hard to say. I mean, one thing is that a lot of manufacturing is stopping right now. So if they're not building cars, it is possible that if you're interested in a car in a month or two, it may be tough. It may be tough that you're not going to get a good deal, especially when people are going back at it. Now, right now, a lot of dealerships are actually closed in terms of selling cars. They're open to service cars. But there are situations where maybe the dealer is willing to work with you. But I would not recommend sacrificing or risking your health to get a car. But and then I just want to emphasize one thing that Mike said in the beginning is, as we're learning and, we're working from home, if there's a chance that you might continue to work from home in the next couple of months, that might change the kind of car that you're actually interested in. That may change a lot of things. So there's a lot of things to consider.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about that, because one of, now that we're kind of quarantined and we're not heading into the track as much, I have our new Honda CR-V hybrid, and was talking to the kids about it, and they were asking about the noises it makes, because it has that, kind of the humming when the external humming when it's driving only on electricity. And one of the things I said is, we won't have to go to the gas pump nearly as much, if we're driving around town with this hybrid, as much as if we had some other car. It's not going to be massive differences, but yeah, like you say, if you're going to not be driving around as much because you're not commuting, now's the time for possibly an alternative type of fuel car like a hybrid. You're not going to, or even an EV. It may not be great in the sense of gas is so cheap right now, but my goodness, if you're not driving that 50 miles round trip or 25 miles round trip each day for commuting, now all of a sudden something that goes 200 miles has a different look in your life, or may fit in your life differently.
Yeah, I have our brand new Highlander hybrid, Toyota Highlander hybrid, and at this rate, I'm not sure if I'll ever have to put fuel back into that thing.
Exactly. So thanks very much, Donald. Hope it gave you some information. We'd love to know if you're shopping, Donald, what you found out there. And for anyone watching, if you're shopping for a car, send us some feedback. Let us know what you're finding out in the dealerships and what they're saying about inventory, availability, and incentives. Send it to us, TalkingCars@iCloud.com. We're going to get to our last question now. Carl from Syracuse, New York. He says, I noticed your testing includes a subjective evaluation of cabin noise. Why not use decibels as a measurement? I noticed the Toyota Avalon and Lexus ES noise ratings are only separated by 1 point. I don't know if that means 1 or several decibels. Please explain. So, Jake, I'm going to just bat this over to you for some information on our noise evaluations. Please.
It's a great question. Certainly you can measure noise in decibels, and there's different ways of doing it. There's a weighted decibel scale and all these different things. And what's interesting is actually we used to do decibel measurements of noise on all our vehicles. What we've found is that it's not really the amplitude of the noise. So, it's not how much noise, it's what kind of noise it is. So there's different types of noises that are more annoying and whatnot. And we started looking at some of the vehicles and we're like, you have a very high decibel rating for a vehicle that, we all love the sound of the vehicle. We have a low decibel ratings for something that just has a really annoying noise that just gets you there. So we've actually made changes over the years that we actually remove the decibel objective measurement because it's really just about quality. Now, in terms of the request for more information about it, that's a great question. I'm just, on the top of my head, it's like maybe we should record that noise and actually provide it to you digitally. There's different ways we can do that, but it's really more about that quality than it is about how much of it.
So kind of like you're saying, like Jen hosting a good quality noise and me hosting a really bad quality of noise. So, but
exactly.
Monty, since you're in doing evaluations, what do you look for really in the noise quality?
Kind of along the lines of what Jake was talking about. It's not so much the, all out, sound of the car in terms of, its decibel level. We're looking at lots of different things when we're out doing our on-road evaluation. So the first thing we might be looking at is, how much noise do the tires make, especially over coarse surfaces on back roads, and then how loud is the engine when you're accelerating to get onto the highway, and is it a good noise or is it a bad noise, and then is there a constant engine hum when you're on the highway, as well as what's the wind noise? And how bad is it? Is it from, the side mirrors? Is it from, the windshield or windshield pillar area? There's lots of different things we're looking for. But it has so much of, like what Jake was talking about. Is this a good engine noise or is it an abrasive engine noise? And so and the other thing we're looking for is, we're looking for vibrations, when a lot of engines these days, or the transmissions let the engines kind of lug at a low RPM in the interest of saving fuel. So, but some of these engines we're noticing have these really annoying vibrations, and so we have to take all these things into account when we're dealing with this our noise evaluation. I also want to say that at a couple other places that I worked at, we did use a decibel sound meter, and they're constantly bouncing up and down, back and forth between 4, 5, 6, 7 decibel levels, and then you're trying to figure out, okay, so now you're trying to get choose one that's in between, and it's actually, at least the ones we were using, aren't that accurate. And so I kind of like the way we do it, which is we're more measuring not just the total volume, but the sound quality as well.
No, that's actually pretty cool. I didn't even know that. I've been here forever and a day, so I appreciate the question. So thanks, Carl, for giving a little more information, asking us to shed some more light, on the noise evaluations. So with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of Talking Cars. As always, like I've said, send us your questions, talkingcars@icloud.com. Let us know your feedback on how it's been with the whole new setup, and let us know your experiences with driving and traveling today, and what you've been experiencing with getting out in the world. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.